This is the sound of an uncertain future. This is the Risktopic Podcast. I am your host, Martin Rooke, and this is the show where we discuss the hazards surrounding science, technology, and society. How we been, ladies and gents? How's your week been? You been good? That's great. First of all, thank you so much for the great feedback that I've had from a few of you who I sort of went, check this out. You did. That's amazing. A lot of you were like, yeah, no, this is good. Keep it up. So I am. This is my second episode. The Risktopic Podcast is now available on SoundCloud, iTunes. I think I signed up to Stitcher, but I don't know whether it's up there, so I do need to double check Stitcher. So feel free to subscribe and share. Sharing is caring, as they say. I hope your week has been good, because mine has been quite tragic. I broke my ankle. So if you're noticing that the audio is sounding slightly different, it's because I'm literally pitched up in my front room right now. It's easier to bring the mic to the laptop than it is for me to bring the laptop to the mic. It's hard to walk and hold things with crutches. I got a pizza the other day. Navigating the stairs was difficult. Like, if you see that movie Revenant, it was kind of like that, just with pizza boxes instead of a bear. So, you know. But this, of course, means that I've had a lot of time whilst in a codeine stupor to sit there and look at the internet. And one thing that I spotted this week was just how hyped everyone was getting over that Szechuan sauce. You know what I'm talking about. If you've seen Rick and Morty Season 3, Episode 1, Rick seems to go off on one about this McDonald's Szechuan sauce, and everyone seems hyped about it. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, if this isn't the perfect parable. Parable. Unsure on that one. No, wait, it's analogy. Parable has a moral lesson to it. So if the Rick and Morty Szechuan sauce is not the perfect analogy, is what I was trying to say, for the social amplification of risk framework, then I don't know what is. So let's jump into that, shall we, ladies and gents? Now, there will be some of you sitting there going, okay, you said words and I have no idea what those words were. Yeah, we're talking about the social amplification of risk framework. In essence, what we're looking at is how we as a society go from having a singular risk event, let's say, so like a car crash or something like that, to talking about it in the wider terms. So let's break it down with our example of the Szechuan sauce. So the Szechuan sauce existed as a McDonald's sauce in 1998 to promote the Disney movie Mulan. It happened. It's been and gone. No one cared about it. No one vaguely remembered it until someone on the writing staff for Rick and Morty sort of went, hey lads, ladies, you remember that Szechuan sauce? So we've had this amplification of the Szechuan sauce from being a thing in history that's happened, an event, to being amplified in this personal station of the writing staff. Whoever the writing staff of Rick and Morty are, you know, they're all sitting there in a room. One person to them went, what about this Szechuan sauce? Can we make it a joke? The rest of the writing staff probably went, yeah, okay, and they wrote it into the episode. But then again, it's not as if they wrote it like a Family Guy-esque sort of cutaway, you know, a unimportant one-liner or just a little clip of Rick getting doused in Szechuan sauce. Everyone goes, look at that. No, they amplified the Szechuan sauce to a position of prominence. It was the last thing that Rick was saying as the episode drew to a close. You know, even if it takes 9 years, we're going to get our Szechuan sauce, Morty. Why do I remember that quote? Oh my Lord, I need to get out of this house. But by having the Szechuan sauce hold such a position of prominence within the episode, and by having it come out of Rick's mouth, or rather being the focal point for Rick, McDonald's Szechuan sauce has been reframed as something sort of important, at least to a beloved character. So we've seen this sort of double layer of amplification, both at the personal station within the writing staff and then within the TV show itself. And not only that, it has been reframed as something important, and that frame seemed to have absolutely resonated with the fans. And if you do a Google Trends search for Szechuan sauce, going back from 2004 until now, this is the most popular Szechuan sauce has been, if I can get the words out. April 2017 is the most popular period for internet searches of Szechuan sauce. And funny enough, the one country that's searching it the most is the United Kingdom. We almost seem to double the amount of searches coming from the United States, Australia, and Canada. Maybe it's because we never had the Szechuan sauce. Did we have the Szechuan sauce? I'm not too sure. But now this highly resonant, amplified item has taken a life of its own. Not only are people Googling this Szechuan sauce, are also talking to one another about it. You're starting to see other media platforms producing their little Facebook videos and stuff like that, going into the history of Szechuan sauce, and there's hashtags about it. And this is another layer of amplification happening again and again and again. More people are talking about the Szechuan sauce, even so much so that the McDonald's Twitter account replied to the Rick and Morty Twitter account simply saying, McLubba-dubba-dub-dub. Yes, guys, this is a serious podcast, believe it or not. There was even an article in Adweek where McDonald's have been reported to be considering bringing back the Szechuan sauce. And this is the thing that the fans of Rick and Morty want, not because they can remember the Szechuan sauce. I have a feeling the vast majority of the viewers would have been about 8-ish when the Szechuan sauce came out, if not younger. But because it is a little bit of change that they can enact on the world, which is incredibly harmless, and possibly because it might vindicate their cartoon hero. You know, there is a completely fictional universe that has had an effect on reality. Rick Sanchez wanted his Szechuan sauce. Rick Sanchez, the character, obviously. We the people, we the fans, through continually amplifying the need for Szechuan sauce and demonstrating to McDonald's that there is a audience out there that would go bananas for this sauce, the fans of Rick and Morty may indeed enact some form of social change to get the Szechuan sauce back on the menu. So now the big question is, how is that related to risk? And the simple answer is that the amplification of risk issues follows a very, very similar pattern to that I've described with the Szechuan sauce. You will have a risk event. Something will happen, whether that is a terrorist attack, whether that is a severe pile-up, whether that is even a research article coming out that highlights a hazard. And you know what, let's just choose one. Let's choose a hazard. Self-driving cars and crashing, okay? There has been reports of self-driving cars that have been crashing. So now, of course, this is interesting. This is a risk event that people start paying attention to. Why are we paying attention to that particular one? Well, we'll come to it at a later podcast, maybe. But you have this event of a self-driving car that has crashed into something. Now, the people local to the crash, the ones who were involved in it, the other drivers who were driving past, at this point in time, they're the only ones who have witnessed it. That event does not exist outside of that geographical area. But now people start taking photos. They start recording what's happened. They phone into news organizations. They send emails to journalists, stuff like that, and say, look, this self-driving car has just crashed into whatever. The self-driving car and the crash is our Szechuan sauce. So now, you know, you have journalists who would receive tons of emails, but let's say they spot this one and go, yeah, okay, that's interesting. I can see a need for our audience to want that. So they amplify this email, you know, this email, couple of pictures, some footage, and they write an article about it. The article that they're writing is our Rick and Morty TV show. This is, of course, a very simplified step-by-step process, but you get what I'm saying. Now, for some reason, that article that was written by that journalist just resonates. People really get on board. Let's just say, for example, I know Joe Rogan has been scared of AI recently. So let's say Joe Rogan finds this article and Joe Rogan invites the journalist onto his podcast to discuss the issue of self-driving cars crashing and killing people. So now that has been amplified across Joe Rogan's audience. And who is Joe Rogan's audience? We don't know. Who else has seen this article? We don't know. There may be organizations that campaign to stop artificial intelligence driven cars from getting on the road. So then they will take this article, they'll take all of these fears and uncertainties about driverless vehicles. And maybe they will then take that to their local government, to a higher level government, and sort of demonstrate, or at least try to demonstrate, that, driverless cars put people on the road in greater danger. And depending on how convincing their argument is, and depending on how much support these people and these groups will have because of how resonant the risk issue of self-driving cars has become, there may then be government policy put in place that limits what we can do with driverless cars. It might even ban it completely, altogether. And this is the thing that we find in risk research that makes it very, very interesting to me anyway, is that you will have a relatively small event, something reasonably innocuous, that goes on to form the basis of change in society. And whether that change is good change or bad change, we've yet to find out. But then the big question is, what exactly is it at each stage of amplification that allows for the next stage? If you're interested in reading up any more on it, Google social amplification and risk framework, also known as SARF. Some of the premier people who worked on it was Nick Pidgeon. You got the Kaspersons, as well as Slovak, and I do like Slovak. And I hope that wasn't too theoretical. I don't exactly have a script here, ladies and gents, so I was just talking off the top of my head. So I'm gonna go and make myself a cup of coffee because the milk has gone bad and I can't go out to get any more milk, so I'm literally stuck here drinking coffee and eating pasta, at least until the missus comes back from Norway. And I'll see you all again in the second segment. And we're back. What do you guys think about the synthwave transitions that we got going from segment to segment? I don't even know if it's synthwave. I think it's just future funk. I'm just loving how this late 80s, early 90s nostalgia is just coming back as a force of its own. And it's one of those things when you're listening and looking at things and nostalgia and stuff, and you're just sitting there and going, oh God, I'm old. You start contemplating things, you're like, man, I'm 27 this year. 30's just around the corner. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to it, turning 30, getting my PhD. But then, of course, you get the other side of things with getting older, and you sort of realise, oh, wait, I am actually starting to slow down. Like, I realise this in fencing, just those young bucks and the ladies just outperform me in any way, shape or form. It's the speed that some of those move those blades. It's unreal. I just can't keep up. Then, of course, you get the other side of things. Like, I was sitting there the other day, say sitting, no one sits in the bathroom. I was standing in the bathroom, as you do, getting yourself ready for the day, and the missus was there, and it was a nice little scene, little bit of a cuddle in the bathroom, and she looks up at the smattering of facial hair that I have, and she's like, you got a grey hair. And I'm like, I probably have many, I just shave my head. You can't really see the hair through the baldness, but I was shocked. I was like, well, damn, I actually, am getting older. You start doing things like counting down the days until your first prostate exam with both abhorrence and minor curiosity. But I read today an article, and I'm sitting there, and it's not making me look forward to getting old. The article is titled, "Got Grey Hair, You Can Get Heart Disease Too." USA Today, guys, you really need to work on your headlines. That's a terrifying headline right there, and this demonstrates just how risk issues can get wildly misinterpreted. Although the actual truth behind this is scientifically astounding. Coming from biomedical science, I read this sort of thing and I'm like, damn, that is interesting. But let's start off with what this article is not saying. It's not saying that being old and having grey hair is a risk factor for heart disease. Being old is just a risk factor for heart disease. Like, let's be serious here, ladies and gentlemen. Heart disease is one of the biggest killers in men. I think it's probably the largest physical ailment in old women as well. The only thing that's more deadly for old women than heart disease is dementia. And of course, it's a pretty obvious thing to state that if you do live 70 or so years, and you're treating your body like trash, stockpiling up on that McDonald's Szechuan sauce, then of course you are going to be at a higher risk of heart disease. Now, I was reading through the article going, this is no new information. However, for a younger man or even younger woman, premature graying, going grey in your late 20s, your early 30s, could indeed be a risk factor for heart disease. Now, again, this isn't saying that grey hair gives you heart disease, but what the argument is that the same biological pathways that cause atherosclerosis, a hardening and a thickening of the arteries, resulting in ischemia, resulting in necrotic damage to the heart and other blood vessels, is indeed very, very similar to the biological pathways that result in hair going grey. Or rather, hair going grey is a sign that your body is not well. It's not saying that you're going to get a heart attack, but what it's saying is that your body is undergoing premature aging, that you're more at risk of biologically exhibiting health concerns that a person 30, 35 years your senior may start exhibiting. Now, what the study did was that it got 545 men who were tested for coronary heart disease and divided into subgroups based on whether they had the disease and the amount of white or grey hair. The hair was assessed on a 1 to 5 scale, so a Likert scale of 1 being black, 5 being pure white. The researchers found that individuals with hair that was at a 3 or more was associated with increased risk of coronary heart disease, independent of age and other risk factors. And you want to know the funny thing? This isn't a new theory. Like, go on Google Scholar right now. So open up your browser, right? Type in google.com, put in Scholar. This is the best place to get some high quality academic articles. If you ever want to try and win an argument, come here. So put in the search field, grey, there we go, hair greying and heart disease, and we've come up with about 3,180 results. Some of them stretching back to 1978. Now, the thing that makes this interesting to me is that premature greying, that happens at the time in someone's lives where they actually can enforce some sort of change to their daily routine. It would mean that they would have to be more conscious of the other risk factors, including, dietary intake and exercise. I think, if anything, knowing this information is great for people because it frees them, or rather gives them the degrees of freedom to try and tackle this head on. But that being said, there does come a double-edged sword. We in the UK, we're all right because we have the National Health Service. In most other countries in the world, they have to rely upon an insurance model of healthcare. So you do get the issue then, if greying hair does become at least an initial risk factor for a heart attack or heart disease or something like that, would people be able to be covered under existing insurance policies? Would insurance companies cover people who are 30 to 40 and have that sort of, George Clooney salt and pepper look to them? And of course, the big question is how will the patients take being told that, maybe you should go see a doctor. You're a little bit young and a little bit grey there, fella. You could be more at risk of heart disease. Would they change? Or would it push someone down a depressive spiral going, I'm going to die young? And they would enact behaviours that would exacerbate the situation. Like drinking, smoking, eating fast food, all of that stuff. Science can only go so far as to identify the risk factors. The scientists are not concerned with what happens afterwards, after these things are found out. That's where society takes over, and that's where we as people try to negotiate the best route forward. Personally, I think amplifying this story, this idea that, premature greying could be a very cheap and very easy indicator for someone that they need to go get themselves tested. They need to speak to a doctor. They need to start taking command of their life in order to reach a state of longevity. We know in the West that men are more likely to get heart complications, circulatory complications, and they are more likely to die younger. But yeah, it strikes me as odd that this has been an academic, a scientific theory that's been knocking about for almost 40 years now, and yet this is the first time that I have heard of it. Maybe it's because there is still a level of uncertainty. We don't know exactly what the pathways are. But yeah, it also seems that the correlation is so high that premature graying seems to be a sign of premature biological aging. And yeah, heart disease is a late extreme of life disease. So it makes sense. But we just see no momentum on this. We don't see campaigns from the British Heart Foundation, let's say. We don't see NHS policy being put in place to address this particular health issue. And the reason why is something that I have no answer to. The very best answer I can give you is a rubbish one, and that is that this type of thing just doesn't resonate with people. People don't want to take it on as a cause, or that it's just hidden. It's just hidden in scientific publications, and me, a few journalists, and probably a couple of other science-based podcast hosts might talk about this. We might be the ones to amplify it. So at the end of the day, if you have a parent who's they're going grey, don't terrify them. Okay? Don't walk up and go, I think you might have heart disease, mum or dad. Let's take it with just a little bit more caution. Maybe suggest that you're getting to that age now where we're going for a full body checkup may indeed be the best route for you to take. It doesn't mean that if you have grey-haired parents that they are going to have a heart attack. It's just that research seems to suggest that having grey hair, especially at a younger age, makes it more probable for a person to have a heart attack. Right, my coffee's gone cold, so I'm going to hobble on these crutches and make myself another one. See you lot in segment 3. Alright, and we're back. I've got myself a coffee, warm one this time. I don't even know what coffee this is. This is just something that was cheap and it works. I ain't one for all those fancy coffees. Tea, on the other hand, right? Give me some loose leaf tea, and I'm miles away. It's one of the reasons why I do enjoy living in Canterbury. There are so many tea houses around. I am the don of loose leaf tea. But we were discussing at the end of the second segment there, how to communicate risk issues with people. It's very easy when you're working in the sciences to get used to communicating with people who are in the sciences, and obviously when you're a journalist, you're used to communicating with your intended audience or your presumed audience, as well as your editor and stuff like that. And it's very easy to forget that there are people who are living their lives in light of this new information that has been given to them, and especially as the internet evolves and has people get more information now quicker. People are going to have to try and negotiate their own behaviours in light of risk information. And there is a trail of thought, not in risk research, but just in people's responses to the media generally, that, the media forces you to think things. They got their little advertising tricks, their little subliminal messaging, and they put thoughts in your head. Okay, maybe not that extreme, but generally people seem to believe that the media influences what people think. Not true. Sorry, guys. That's simply false. And to be honest, that's one of the things that the social amplification and risk framework was constructed to understand. In the history of risk research, there was loads of psychometric analyses that went on. How do people respond to this risk factor in light of the media coverage? And generally, it's been found again and again and again that when people are presented with a risk issue by the media, they sort of take it on board and go, okay, let me think about this. I either accept bits of it. I reject it. And you tend to find that things like educational level, political persuasion, and even gender influences how people perceive risk issues. And yeah, we genuinely do find that women, way more than men, hold certain sensitivities towards risk issues. It's just interesting that that is true across different racial populations as well. But it's also acknowledged that the one thing that the media does do is it sets the stage for social debate. By amplifying particular issues, they become the issues that we talk about. Again, go back to the Szechuan sauce analogy at the beginning. Up until Rick and Morty aired, no one really cared about Szechuan sauce. Now, exactly what factors do journalists look at, and what do they amplify? Well, that's a discussion for another podcast. But as always, with any real debate, there does seem to be two sides drawn. I think you can say. I guess you could say there's a third side who are relatively agnostic and don't care. But you generally have the pro whatever it is side and the anti whatever it is side. And it does strike me as interesting, those who are considered to be vaccine deniers, climate change skeptics, or is it vaccine skeptics and climate change deniers? I don't know. But they are always, they seem to be portrayed as stupid, as absolutely thick people who just simply don't understand the science that is presented to them. That they listen to too much Fox News and Alex Jones and all these things, and that their chosen media outlets have somehow made these people stupid. And it shows just how much that we have to learn about one another as a species. When I'm reading an article in Time magazine with the headline of "Why Vaccine Skeptics Respond Better to Information Than Shaming," I think that could be true for everyone. The article actually suggests, right, that for people to get their kids vaccinated, if they don't like vaccines, what they should do is they should sit down and talk with someone who has had their kids vaccinated. It just makes me laugh, ladies and gentlemen, that we're moving forward with all this technology, and yet the best way we've still got to actually communicate to one another is to have a heart-to-heart sit down and a chat. And I think that is absolutely perfect. I love that. I would love to have more heart-to-heart conversations with people. And especially in light of, Brexit, Donald Trump being elected, all of these things, we seem to have polarized discussion along the lines of, you're either with me or you're stupid. You either believe the things I believe or you're stupid. And especially in light of something like vaccinations, I sure as hell can understand someone who wouldn't want their kid to be vaccinated because they simply don't trust it. You're dealing with children. The second you involve children into a risk decision, society will round upon the decision that keeps kids safe. Look back to America in the early 70s, I think, and it was even here in the UK, that we was having kids die in fridges. They would climb in, the door would shut, they wouldn't be able to get out of them again, and they would die in them. In America, there was a law that was passed that made fridges or fridge manufacturers have to change the design so that they could be opened from the inside. How many kids do you reckon died a year? Go on, I'll give you a second. 3. 3 kids died in 1 year, yet it was because the risk was focused around children that people said, no, we need to completely change everything about our contemporary fridge designs so that children don't die. Marry that with just the number of multinational corporations across various industries who have been caught doing something shady. They've been caught fudging numbers, they've been caught instigating fraud, or even, illegal polluting, illegal dumping, all of these things, harming the environment, harming the local communities in which they're supposed to serve, especially with factories pumping out pollution into the local environment. And now you've got to put yourself in the position of a parent, and they've been told that the best thing for your kid is to inject them with something that you don't fully understand. You work a 40-hour work week in a factory lugging boxes around, driving a forklift. What time do you have in your daily routine to read those highfalutin academic articles, to understand the things that a doctor understands. You don't. But you know that there are big businesses out there who are looking to make money off of you as much as they can. Wasn't it recently a HIV drug had its price hiked just because the CEO wanted to make more of a profit? I think they got resoundingly shamed and destroyed. But you have people out there who are seeing all of these shady things that industries do and then go, and you're the ones telling me to put your product in my child. And yeah, there are examples like the falsified link between MMR and autism in the UK. The MMR vaccine was demonstrated to have a link to autism, which was, again, resoundingly ridiculed and just was not based on science. But that adds another element of uncertainty to a parent's decision-making process. You have experts telling you one thing, you have the media telling you another thing. You have no way of independently verifying it for yourself, and you still have to decide what is best for your child. At the same time, there are parallel discussions going on about genetically modified organisms, and we need to keep everything as organic as possible. Organic is good. And then you go, okay, so if organic is good, then why would I want to tamper with my kid? Especially the fact that I can't trust the big business who wants to put their products in my child. Think back to the thalidomide example. Thalidomide was supposed to be great for women to get over the morning sickness. Sort of a side effect, deformed kids. There is information out there and people do not know how to make heads or tails of it, and they still have to decide for the safety of their kids. I, for one, wouldn't blame a parent who said, okay, I'm not going to vaccinate my child. Would I vaccinate my child? Yeah, sure. If I had a kid. Stave off all of those illnesses. But I sure as hell wouldn't think that someone was stupid for not trusting science. And science sure as hell has a long way to go before it makes itself trustworthy. But again, returning to the article, there was a study that analysed 3-year vaccine promotion intervention that took place in different communities across the Washington state in America. And yeah, they found that by having the parents of vaccinated kids speak to vaccine hesitant parents, that this prevalence of vaccine hesitancy fell from about 23% to 14% of parents in the study. And subsequently as well, the number of parents who were concerned about other people not vaccinating their kids rose from about 81 to 89%. So again, we find that talking to people like their people works. What a surprise. What a surprise. Right, anyway, that about rounds up the show, ladies and gentlemen. This week was actually surprisingly more themed than I thought it would be. Mostly discussing media amplification and how we go about getting risk issues and getting the science of risk issues to be taken seriously by people. And I genuinely think that the only thing we can do is continue having candid and honest discussions about risk, which is something that I genuinely do aim to achieve with this podcast. But the other side of things, and one of the reasons why I am doing this podcast, is we have to try and make these issues more resonant with people. And how we do that? Well, that might just be another podcast in the making. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed the Risktopic Podcast. I am Martin Rooke. As always, you can follow me on Twitter. That is at RookeMartin, ROOKEMARTIN. Feel free to follow the podcast on SoundCloud and on iTunes. Rate it, leave a review, and all of that good stuff. And I will see you again next week. Have fun. Bye-bye.